To my distinguished opponents, I see your Dr. Evil and your Dr. Pol Pot, and I raise you a pope and a poet, specifically Pope Gregory the Great and the great poet Dante Alighieri. Because after all, one of the things we have to figure out here is, what do we mean by evil? Well, Google encourages us to think algorithmically. After all, it's built everything that it has on algorithms. One of the simplest forms of algorithms, the if-then statement, or if you prefer, the checklist. Dante offers us such a checklist in the Divine Comedy. I know you know it. I know you know it with me, so say it along with me. The 7 deadly sins: luxuria, gula, avaritia, assedia, ira, invidia, and superbia, right? Well, okay, you didn't say it along with me. To walk through, I can show you that Google has, at times, committed every single one of these 7 deadly sins. The first, luxuria, which translates as extravagance or lust. I spent a bit of time on the Google campus out in California. They get massages, right? The people who work there get massages. That is corporeal lust of the highest order, or at least for a bunch of geeks about the best they're going to do. Number 2, gula, or gluttony. The other thing about the Google campus is they get incredible food, all they can eat all day, no matter what they want. There is so much food that they never need to say no. That is the very definition of gluttony. Number 3, avaritia, greed. We've already heard from Randy about the greed embodied in the Google Yahoo advertising deal. That is one of many examples of Google overreaching to corner a market or completely undermine a market in an effort to maximize its returns. Number 4, acedia, sloth. Now, I could talk about how lazy and self-satisfied Google was in its effort to roll out an online video service. The early days of Google Video were very much a matter of figuring they owned the video realm, and they weren't actually going to do anything new or fantastic until these whippersnappers at YouTube came across with their Flash video platform and basically ran around them to the point where they ended up having to buy that company just to keep pace. But there's actually a better example of sloth, and that is that Google itself, its very nature, its very model of advertising is based on free riding. Google makes money off of our work. We blog, we put our cats on skateboards and record them for videos. We do all of this work, and then Google harvests our work, runs all of this content through its computers, spits it back out at us with almost no actual value added, and what we end up getting is a tremendous amount of money based on free riding, the very definition of sloth. Wrath, ira, wrath. There are a number of high-profile cases of people who have been involved with Google through their AdSense program, through which they've agreed to place ads on their own blogs. I think Jeff is one of these people, but not one who has suffered the wrath of Google. Many of these people have found their accounts shut down, their revenue stopped for reasons that can never be explained, but they did something to violate Google's policies, but they get no feedback and no response and no justice. And then there are hundreds of small companies all around America that have found their ranks decimated, their Google ranks declined significantly because, again, they tried to optimize their results. They were just doing what a company should do, trying to get more attention for themselves. And Google's algorithms, its faceless, soulless algorithms, came at them with wrath, another of the 7 deadly sins. Invidia, envy. Google has, over the last few years, engaged in a series of efforts to try to muscle in on the markets of other successful companies, Microsoft being the most prominent. Google has recently tried to push its suite of services that directly compete with Microsoft Office. Of course, they have at various times threatened to muscle out eBay, muscle out PayPal, muscle out Amazon in various ways. Number 7, the one I want to talk about the most, superbia, pride, or hubris. Now, let me remind you of the actual motto of the company. It's not do no evil or don't be evil. It's actually to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible. What could be more hubristic than that? What could be more prideful than that? General Motors doesn't say we're going to organize all the places in the country and make them universally accessible. General Motors says we're going to try to sell cars. Not that that's the best example to use this week, I understand. Nonetheless, no company besides Google would ever come up with a motto or a mission statement like that. But let me tell you something that Sergey Brin One of the founders of Google said a number of years ago during an interview when someone asked him, what would the perfect search engine be like? And he said, without missing a beat, it would be like the mind of God. Ladies and gentlemen, that's more than hubris, that's blasphemy. Now, the particular kind of hubris that energizes Google is, of course, a sense of techno-fundamentalism. The notion that you can always invent something to solve the problem that the last invention created. And that faith in technology, that technology can cover all of our sins and all of our faults and fix all of our problems, is, again, the ultimate hubris. It's the hubris expressed in the myth of Pandora, for instance, the myth of having too much knowledge. There are so many examples in which, in human history, in which techno-fundamentalism has led to great suffering. Not that Google is about to lead us to great suffering, but they're still committing the sin of hubris. Now, hubris is actually the most serious of the 7 deadly sins. As Dante explains to us, it was the sin that Lucifer committed. Lucifer was a good guy. Lucifer fell because he thought he could be as effective as God, as good as God, and thus he became Satan. The very notion of the "don't be evil" motto is itself hubristic, is itself evil, because it is itself a violation of the 7 deadly sins. One real-world example, let me finish with very quickly, Google Book Search. Google has been trying to scan in 36 million books from libraries around the world in an effort to essentially corner the market on digital book access for a number of years. Early on, 4 years ago, when it started this project or got public with this project, it claimed that everything was cool as far as copyright was concerned. In other words, copyright only applies to mere mortals, not to superhuman super companies like Google. Well, it turns out Google wasn't right about that. Last month, Google ended up having to settle and wrote a check for $125 million to publishers and authors because it turns out they weren't quite as on the ball about copyright as they thought. Thank you very much.